Silicon, now available at every Radio Shack that still exists.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me as always, our Galax and Petty fan. Why don't you say something? Anyway, well, let's get to the news, such as it is. Galax, why don't you start us off this week?
I had the day off from work because I was getting I had a dentist appointment. I got some blood taken for labs for the doctor, and then I got my flu and COVID shots. So,
man.
Thankfully, I don't get super bad from those generally, but I am a little bit tired. Some from just dealing with shots, and some from just mentally dealing with 3 different medical appointments today. Also,
Right.
nothing super major video game wise. The next Splatoon Splatfest is coming up much sooner than I had initially expected, so preparing for that.
All right. Anything else?
I think that is all.
All right, Petty, you're up.
Oh man. So as far as gaming related stuff goes this week, not a whole lot happened. But Sunday I had that try scuba diving thing and I actually really enjoyed it. So they're talking about having another one in February. So because I wanted to bring my sister with me, but she ended up feeling sick to her stomach on Sunday and decided not to go. So we're going to see about if we can try this on February and see if she'd like to give it a try.
Insert joke about swimming in cold water.
Yeah, it's an indoor heated pool, so.
Not the same as if you're doing it in the ocean.
Yeah, we're a little far from the ocean. What being in the near geographic center of the United States, ocean's a little far.
And presumably you're not near any major lakes either.
The closest lake I know of is called Beaver Lake in Arkansas, and that's about a 4.5-hour drive.
And the Mississippi River is right out.
Yeah, I mean, that's still a 4-hour drive. That's the other side of the state. Because Missouri.
We'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
I don't think either one of us have ever been to Missouri.
I don't want to be in Missouri. Please help me out.
I mean, I think Galax here is the only one who wants to be in their state.
I mean, valid. Both of ours are just states full of crazy people.
Yeah,
One of them might be a little more messed up than the other, though.
Well, it's hard to tell with red states in general.
Valid.
But anyway.
And then, other than that, not a whole lot else has been going on. Next week, my mom and sister go on their little Thanksgiving outing, I guess, to go see my other sister and her daughter. So I'm going to have the upstairs to myself. Well, basically the whole house, because my dad sleeps during the day, so as long as I don't wake him up, I can basically do what I please. So that's going to be a fun adventure for next week.
Indeed.
But yeah, other than that, I think that's it.
All right, my go. Like this week has been unexpectedly been busy. Like, um, dear mother got sick again. Like a different virus.
I
Um,
was about to ask.
no less unpleasant, just
Mm,
differently unpleasant. Stomach virus this time.
ah,
So, you know, a lot of awkward conversations, let's say.
I would imagine.
Conversations that I never want to hear. But,
As somebody who has irritable bowel syndrome problems, I can probably relate.
yeah, I'm like, she's definitely gotten better. Um, like she's eating solid food and is able to go out again. So, I don't have to go and get stuff and drop it off to her.
Mm,
Like, that's always, super annoying. I'm like, but is also something that I'm bracing myself to having to do more of because, she is of advancing age, let's say.
agreed.
And, this kind of thing will prop up with more frequency, unless we find the answer to the singularity, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, um, let's see. Uh, have to bring the vehicle in and get the headlights replaced tomorrow. So,
Fun?
um, not really, but it's got to be done.
Put
So
the
I
air
can.
quotes on that fun then. Just.
Well, it's more, so I can able to use the car during the night. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, it turns out the headlights burnt themselves out, so they're really weak.
Yeah.
Like, uh, let's see. Given all this, I had to delay my flu shot to next week. Like, I swear, like like I think I might have called the wrong branch of the doctor's office, or they called me, or whatever, because like I rescheduled it for next Monday. Then they called me up and like they still thought it was tomorrow. I'm like, no, it's on Monday. Point of order is it's next Tuesday because apparently they don't give out flu shots on Mondays. Like,
Kind of odd, but okay.
like um, it's a doctor's office that has multiple branches,
Mm-hmm. I'm
and
aware, yeah.
I know mine said that they do immunization clinics on certain days, which probably means they just take some days and have like a lot of their people working on giving shots because it's easy to do all of that at once.
yeah. Anyway, so that's happening, and then after that, I have to go Thanksgiving shopping afterwards. So pretty packed day. Day then. Um, let's see. In terms of gaming, kind of been. It's been kind of a busy week, so not as much time as I would have liked to indulge in the gaming, but um, I have managed to find a bit of time to play the first level of the Panzer Dragoon remake, um, which is better than I thought it would be. Um, Perhaps better than the reviews, but then again, a lot of those reviews were around launch, and the game got quality of life improvement patches since then. Like got the 60 FPS patch among other things. Like, and it's actually working pretty damn well. Unlike the House of the Dead remake, which my system doesn't like. Like, But the main game I've been playing is one for reviews this week. More on that at the end of the program. So merrily we shall roll along into the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Aurora.
Hey, how are you all?
We seem to be doing well enough. How are you today?
Doing pretty well. Happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Right. So, how we like to get started is we like to get to know the people behind the games, the studios, and all of that business. And we do this by asking this particular question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
So, I think on a personal level, I've just always had video games in my life, which I feel like a lot of people can relate to. But in my case specifically, I think my first game was, oh gosh, maybe Leaf Green for Game Boy Advance. I just happened to, yeah, I have a memory of that's like my first game that I actually was really invested in. Like the day I got it, I could not sleep. I was like 8 or something. I could not sleep. And I was like, I need to grab the Game Boy. I need to keep playing. This is just
I think we've all had that
wild
move
to
with
me.
our various gaming obsessions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like it's really special when that happens like in modern times or like now that we're adults and have jobs and that sort of thing.
Oh, look, the sun's
Yeah.
come up. I probably can put the Game Boy away. Now let me go catch a few more.
Yeah, exactly. But no, that's how I got started in games on a personal level, and then I just kept playing. In particular, Nintendo games. My Nintendo DS was like a cornerstone of my childhood, and then succeeded by the 3DS. And then yeah, I started going off to college and playing games less, which was, I guess, a bit of a shame. But I have a Switch. My fiance has an Xbox. I'm exposed to at least the console side of video games. I'm not as much of a PC gamer nowadays, just due to the games that I gravitate towards don't really need intensive graphics or are just more comfortable in console. So if I do play a game on my PC, it's just on my personal laptop that's not very spec'd out, but it gets the job done, that sort of thing. But on a professional level, I mentioned college. That's sort of how that started. I guess professional's not the right word because, to be clear, I'm not a professional game developer. I'm purely a hobbyist game developer. Professionally, I'm a front-end JavaScript developer. So there's definitely some analogs between front-end development and game development. The most obvious one is the visuals. And the design work. I also do quite a bit of design work for my job. And that translates to UI design. But yeah, anyways, back to college. I had picked up music writing by the end of high school. And that's a hobby I really enjoyed. But in order to really post that anywhere, you need some sort of visual to go with it. Which is why I then picked up pixel art in 2019. I participated in Inktober, and I got, I think, 20 pieces done, and that was like pixel art boot camp for me. And it just sort of kept growing after that, and I think I've really honed in on a style, which I enjoy making, and I can churn out pretty fast. Gets the job done, sort of thing.
But how did you pixel art with ink? I'm kidding.
Honestly, yeah, I felt kind of weird tagging it with hashtag Inktober, even though it was like the most digital medium out there. So I thought that was kind of funny at the time. I still think it's a little funny, but no, it's just October is like art month, that sort of thing. And it felt like a good motivator to get into pixel art. But all of that does not really translate to games on its own, unless you're actually working on a game. Which leads me into right when I graduated, or I guess right before I graduated, I was working as a Unity developer for my college, making essentially an AR app to display geospatial data. It was basically just a part-time job. It was sort of pick a project and work on it, as long as it's incorporates AR and incorporates geographical data in some way. So it was very flexible. It was a great learning experience. And that segued into graduating and not having a job. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. So I picked up the Godot engine because games have always been something that I kind of wanted to do. And now that I have an actual computer science degree, I should probably learn some skills to apply what I've learned. And so I picked up the Godot engine and sort of treated it as a means to an artistic end. Or rather, I viewed game development as a way to sort of make my pixel art and my music more expressive. But then after working with it for a while, I just sort of found the love of the game programming part of it as well. So that's another creative outlet for me at this point. And then fast forward a couple more years, published is a strong word. I've released Debugged, which was game for Game Off 2021. I did that in a month. And then the following summer, I worked on Noodlebonks for a 72-hour jam. And then throughout 2023, I've been working on Silt Spawn, which I believe is the topic of the interview today.
It is. Though, before we go into that specifically, I do have a question to ask, as you are someone who is versed in both Unity and the Godot engine, which is not the most common combination out there, but I imagine that it's
Yeah.
something that's going to be more prolific as time goes by due to recent controversies. Anyway, my question is, how do the two engines compare to one another?
Aside from the corporate politics aspect of it, which is probably the one people will focus on today,
Right.
I'd say the biggest difference is that Godot is more lightweight. It's way more lightweight than Unity. And then the next biggest factor is Godot is probably better suited for 2D games, and Unity is probably better suited for 3D games. Both of those traits really agree with my sort of style or what I gravitate toward in games in general. I'm one that enjoys a really tight, compact experience, especially if it's 2D, and even more especially if it's a platformer. So both of those aspects made me really enjoy Godot compared to Unity. But yeah, to answer your main question, Godot is it's a lot lighter, it's a lot easier to boot up a project and just play in. In particular, due to GDScript, the built-in programming language of Godot. It's built into the editor. It's very well integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean you can essentially click and drag aspects from the inspector or like things about what you're making. Like, for instance, you have a rigid body and you want to reference that in your code. You can just click and drag that into the editor and it'll have a reference to that in the code. A lot of those quality of life features are what makes Godot special in my eyes, or GDScript specifically. Yeah, and then Unity, it didn't agree with me as much. I think due to the fact that there's like sort of compartmentalized features, or rather, Godot has a node system where everything is a node. Everything can be essentially loaded in and used like a level, or it can be a player, or it can be just a texture or something. Everything is a descendant of one type of thing. But in Unity, it's a bit more segregated. Like there's the prefab system, and then there's some other analog. It's been a while since I've worked in Unity, so I can't really speak in depth about that. But I don't know, Godot just seems a lot more cohesive to me compared to Unity.
That's interesting. Like I said, it's good to get a perspective on that because, once again, it's not so much that we don't get people who work in other engines. The Godot engine isn't that popular right now compared to like even other 2D powerhouses like Game Maker.
Right.
Anyway, so getting into Silt Spawn specifically, or the game formerly known as Untitled Cave Game until recently.
Yes.
Well, I suppose first question lies right there. What led you to call this game Silt Spawn?
So I'll first say it stayed as Untitled Cave Game for a long time because I am very bad at naming things. Or rather, I don't have the commitment or the drive to name things very much. So I just put it off until it's like, okay, I need marketing material, and in order to have marketing material, a game needs a title. So that's one reason it just needed to have a title. But more to answer your question better, the game itself has a sort of fleshed out ecosystem / world / lore. And a lot of it revolved around silt as a key source of life and death in general. Those are sort of the themes I want to explore. Essentially, finding your place as a little thing in a big world. That's one thing. What's one theme I want to explore in this game? So yeah, silt is sort of the beginning and the end thematically within Silt Spawn. I had originally called it Silt Sown due to the fact that you also sow things or you plant things, and there are plants.
I was gonna say sow like needle or sow like seed.
Like seed, exactly. Yeah. The word sown to me is just, it's really charged charged with prose is the best way I can put it. It's a very pretty word. But the reason I chose not to go with that with Silt Zone is because another bug-themed cave platformer is called Silk Song. And I was like, I don't know.
You mean going to be?
Going to be whenever it happens in 2027 or whenever Team Cherry gets
Sometime
around to
before
it.
they keep Death of the Universe, ideally.
Maybe. We shall see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I chose not to go with Silt Zone. And I tried to find a word that was thematically similar to Sown and also had the sort of really earthy quality to it. Sown is very, it's very reminiscent of working out outside, working in the dirt, that sort of thing. And I was like, what's another very primal word I could use? And I settled on Spawn because the player character sort of rises out of the silt between, I guess, runs of the game.
Interesting. And so, are you playing as a character named Silt, or is that more the earth around this buddy here?
The latter. I don't think this character has a name. The character, or another character in the game named PB, calls our player character Little Hopper. So I guess Hopper could be a name for it. But it doesn't officially have a name. But yes, to answer your question, Silt is more reminiscent of the environment around the player character.
Okay. That's a bit of a change for, like, you got one of these, not necessarily mascot-driven platformers, but, anthropomorphic character-driven platformer. Usually the name and the character are in the title.
Yes. But no, this project started as a practice in procedural generation. So the focus was always on the environments rather than the player character. So it just didn't even register with me to name it after the player character.
Fair enough. And what experimentations or lessons in procedural generation were you hoping to accomplish with Silt Spawn here?
I guess sort of just to get practice in it. In hindsight, I realized that the list of requirements were quite a hard one. It took about, 3 months of just tinkering around with an algorithm before I got one that actually did what I wanted it to. Yeah, I started actually developing this game because I had a cave generator algorithm that, I guess I'll go through the list of requirements, that one was sort of maze-like and interesting to traverse, but not too confusing. There weren't too many loops, but there were some loops. Like existing algorithms out there either produce 0 loops and are completely just like complete mazes without loops, or they are more Terraria based or similar to Terraria, where it's less about lines in a grid and more about just blocks that are with chunks taken out of them. That approach did not work for Silt Spawn due to another requirement was that you needed to be able to traverse the entire cave without editing it at all, or like placing blocks to reach other areas. So that was probably the hardest requirement, I would say. And it made the cave generator algorithm like pretty complicated. It's maybe about 1,000 lines of code just to get an array that represents the cave system, not even to make it. But yeah, the entire cave systems are fully traversable without any sort of environmental, I guess, placing blocks or whatever mechanic you'd call that.
It might depend, like tiling, I think.
Yeah, it's sort of nebulous. I'd say like changing the structure of the world around you. I don't know. It probably has a term. I just can't recall it right now.
Right. And how long have you been working on Silt Spawn?
So seriously, like working on it almost every day. I've been doing since early March, I would say. March of this year. I can grab the first devlog. I've been posting bi-weekly devlogs since then. I have not been advertising them. Just due to the fact I'm kind of not taking this project. Seriously is not the right word. I'm not trying to make this project my magnum opus. It's definitely a learning experience first and foremost, which is why I don't want to make this front and center of my work. I'm more than proud of posting clips, but advertising the devlogs was something I wasn't looking to do. But anyways, all that's to say is the first devlog was on March 30th of this year. Mm-hmm. And since then I've been posting bi-weekly updates or updates every other week. And yeah, it just kept gradually growing as much as one person can make a game take shape. And here we are, about a month and a half away from the demo releasing.
Oh, man.
And how much work do you think you have in creating the full game?
That's sort of a lingering question. I have heard that it's a bad practice to get too invested in a project before you even have anyone playtest it, which is my case here. I have had basically no one playtest it. And so I'm treating this essentially as a vertical slice or a really short experience to see if this idea is worth pursuing further. If it's received well and if people want more, if a significant amount of people want more, I'm more than happy to work on it and try to flesh it out more. I have ideas, like for instance, a biome system. Right now, there's essentially one biome where you have plants and these little vents that emanate little silt particles, that sort of thing. But I have other ideas to take that even further. That's just one example, though. I would have to actually put more thought into how it would progress story-wise. Right now, that's not really figured out. That's like the last major piece I have to put together. I have everything basically done, including the music. That's what I finished this week. But the story, the dialogue, that's something that really needs the focus. And that's something that will need a lot more focus if this were to stretch out into maybe a 20-hour game.
Okay. Like a 20-hour game would be very ambitious for a side project.
Yeah, the reason I'm only posting it as a demo for now is because, like I said, I don't want this to be I don't want this to be my last big project sort of thing. Because usually indies have their one big project, and maybe they usually don't have any other. But I do want to move on to something more larger in scope, something that has more freedom artistically. Due to the fact that, well, I say that because Silt Spawn is very limited artistically. It's 4 colors exactly. It's a very rigid pixel grid, very small pixel grid, that sort of thing.
Right.
Yes, 20 hours is very, very ambitious for an indie. But I think due to the nature of procedural generation and how progression is kind of slow in Silt Spawn, it's very Hades-like progression. So due to that fact, I think it could very easily reach 20 hours if I had all of my ideas implemented, and we had a very rich story to accompany it.
And what would you say is the determining factor in this being a demo versus a full project?
I think scope, really. Yeah, the fact that this demo is intended to be probably a 1-hour experience at most, which is pretty long for a demo, especially for an indie. But yeah, it's just the scope of it, really. And the fact that it's been about 9 months of working on a project that I told myself I'd work on for maybe a month, or maybe that I wouldn't even turn into a game. Like for instance, I did not even intend to make this a game at first. It was purely supposed to be a practice in procedural generation. But I really liked what I had created, and I wanted to see it actually turned into a game. But obviously, that approach has the issue of it wasn't gameplay first. So yeah, like I said, I'm not confident. I'm not confident that it'll be a wide-reaching type of gameplay style. I enjoy playing it, but I'm the one who made it. So I don't know if my opinion is the one that should be the most widely held when talking about Silt Spawn.
I'm like, I suppose it might come down to whatever feedback you get when you publicly release the demo.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm waiting on before I decide what my next project will be.
And I suppose it is worth inquiring, what other ideas do you wish to pursue in lieu of pressing forward with this one?
Well, I've had a cooking game in my pocket for a while. Some of my earliest well-received clips on Twitter were of basically a food or an ingredient chopping minigame where you pick an ingredient from a list and it puts it on a cutting board and you cut it up. That was like the first thing I did in Godot. So I don't really want to go back and look at the code for that because I really struggled with it. But yeah, I really like that idea. I made a lot of sprites for the ingredients that I think would be a shame to waste because I think they're really adorable. So a cooking minigame or a cooking game, full-fledged game, would be one I could pursue. I'd also wanted to pursue something, again, more story-focused, something... Yeah, something that's very vague, but that's the idea. Very story focused and pushing the art system that I've developed in Silt Spawn even further.
Oh, it sounds like options are on the table.
Absolutely. That's always how it goes, right? You have so many ideas and it's just picking one.
I mean, I suppose at this stage, that is the correct vantage. It's well, we get a lot of people who are like knee deep in their projects or whatever, and they're on, let's say year one of a 3-year journey. So freedom tends to be a bit more limited the more you are committed to an idea.
That's totally fair.
Yeah. And I suppose my final question in this area is, do you hope to keep your game development at this level, or would you one day want to make it a full-time gig?
Oh, I would really love to make it a full-time gig. It's just the issue of funding it, really. My current job, I really like my current job, so it would take a lot for me to give that up. That the main benefit or the main reason I would give it up is because I'd be able to work on games, which is a lot more fun than working on whatever I work on. Yeah, I think funding is the main issue. And also, I don't think I'd want to do it alone if I were doing it for a career. Like, I would absolutely love to join another team, a pre-existing team. Because I don't really enjoy the managerial parts of things. Like, I can manage myself. That's no problem. I can manage a Trello board. But organizing between half a dozen people, several dozen people, I don't think that's something I'd want to do. I really like the coding part of it, especially the artistic coding part of it. Taking some visual idea and making it happen within the code. Like, for instance, the lighting system in Silt Spawn. That was totally bespoke for that project. I don't know. I haven't found anything similar online. I mean, similar I've definitely found online, but I haven't found that idea online. Which I can talk about it more if you'd like, but it's very nitty gritty. But yeah, yeah.
You can if you want.
I mean, if you'd like, it's essentially encoding textures so that they have different textures at different light levels. But storing that all within a single texture, and then writing a separate shader to decode that so that you have a pretty dynamic and expressive light system. That's pixel perfect. That's the reason I did it, because this game is very, very limited. Silt Spawn, I mean, is very, very limited in its pixel counts. It's 120 or 192 by 108 pixels. The game is. So I needed like full control of how the lighting worked and what each and every pixel did at different lighting levels. So yeah, I'd created a custom plugin to encode images, and then I created a 500 line shader to decode it and do other effects based on other encoded behaviors, that sort of thing. I'm proud of the system, and I definitely want to reuse it because I think it can be a lot more powerful.
I see. And right, I'll see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you.
I think I'm good.
I think I'm good too, yes.
All right. So it was certainly a uplifting conversation. Very technical. And hopefully, whatever choice you make in regards to the future of Silt Spawn, you are happy with. But I suppose we'll see what lies in that direction in due time. Anyway, in the meantime, the game is Silt Spawn. It's set to debut on itch.io here in about a month and a half. So late December, early January, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. I think the goal, I don't have an exact date, but I think the goal is for the week between Christmas and New Year's.
Okay, and so look for it at let's see, ggauroras.itch.io/siltspawn demo. So
Yes, exactly.
anyway, Petty, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion for the week. So we are picking up where we left off last week, and that is talking about Spider-Man games. Because once again, there are a lot of Spider-Man games out there. I think we left off with Spider-Man for the PlayStation, or rather, Neversoft Spider-Man. And the success that game found led to basically the Activision era of Spider-Man. As Spider-Man was, pretty much exclusively under the banner of Activision until about 2014, if I'm remembering correctly. And they were not shy about pumping out Spider-Man games because isn't that the Activision methodology right there? You find something successful, and then you just pump out content until you bleed the well dry.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, so many franchises murdered by them.
I'd say more drained.
Valid.
And once again, like Spider-Man was definitely no different in that regard. It started off humbly. It really didn't. Activision didn't really start the, like the yearly proliferation of Spider-Man games until the Xbox 360 era. Um, granted, when they had it's like when they released a Spider-Man game, like say Spider-Man the movie for the PlayStation 2. It's more, if you got a system, it's going to get a Spider-Man game. Even
again, still one of the three most recognizable superheroes.
Yeah, though what would usually happen is the consoles would be their own game, and then the handhelds, usually the Game Boy Advance, though when we get into like the year of 2004, 2005, we've got the DS and the PSP on the scene. So each one of those consoles will get their own version of Spider-Man. Different, surprisingly, sometimes different than the other versions. Like, I'm trying to remember if like Spider-Man 2 is the same. Like, I think Spider-Man 2 for the Game Boy Advance and the DS are the same, basically. But the PlayStation Portable, that takes more after the console versions. Really utilizing the power of the PlayStation Portable in relation to the other handhelds.
Yeah, the PSP was basically nearly a PS1 in power, just handheld.
Yeah. Now there were still some limitations, like you weren't getting open world Spider-Man games on the PlayStation Portable.
We're also not going to talk about Peter Parker's facial model, are we?
I'm like, no, we are not.
Thank God.
I'm like, it's like, I will note they kind of tried that on the Game Boy Advance. No joke. Like, the Spider-Man, the movie game for the Game Boy Advance, has some attempts at open world gameplay. They're not good. They are ambitious. You know, you had a lot of that on the Game Boy Advance. You know, when it hit the level of the Super Nintendo, a lot of developers on the Game Boy Advance tried to reach that 3D gameplay plateau.
Yeah, the
With
Game Boy Advance has a lot of theoretical power. It's let down by quite bad speaker and
that,
a terrible screen in the first version.
that has nothing to do with system power, though.
Yeah.
Let's be real here.
They kept wanting to leverage the Mode 7 chip like they did in the SNES.
Well,
Okay,
I
I guess what I mean is I'm thinking of a couple of games that I had that had like really ambitious graphics theoretically, but ultimately they didn't work because of like the screen in general.
right, but that's not what I'm getting at.
Combination of brightness and size.
Once again, those are different hardware limitations. I'm talking about like the actual processing power that the Game Boy Advance could deliver. I'm like, which was a surprising amount. Um, like I'm kind of surprised that Nintendo didn't try to do a Star Fox game on the Game Boy Advance. It wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been good, but that wasn't necessarily stopping developers with these 3D projects. For a good example is there are a surprising amount of first-person shooters on the Game Boy Advance, like a lot more than you ever saw on the Super Nintendo.
There were a couple Duke Nukem ones, weren't there?
There's Duke Nukem Advance. I don't think there's another. There's another Duke Nukem first-person shooter on Nintendo handhelds, but the second one was on the DS. Duke Nukem Mass Destruction. Like, my point is, like, there was a whole bunch of ambition in this space, and Spider-Man is in that realm. It wasn't good.
No,
But
no, it was not.
like, I'll post a video of it in like the Discord, because like I said, you got to keep in mind where this game came out, um and that is 2002. you know but it's always a hard thing to rate because like, is it good? Not really. Is it ambitious? Yes. Has it aged well? No. Um, but you do have to kind of respect ambition of this scale displayed on such, not just such a console or handheld, however you want to frame it, but also a licensed title. Not the most surprising licensed title to display this, but I think that goes to Asterix and Obelisk XXL, which is like the finest example of 3D on the Game Boy Advance, and is actually a surprisingly good full 3D platformer. Like, it's doing some pretty impressive technical wizardry there. Anyway, so putting that aside, on the consoles, really the Spider-Man games that are, beloved, are the first two, let's say PlayStation 2 games. Yes, they came out on all the consoles, but, when you think of that era, you think the PlayStation 2. And and it's also 9 times out of 10, if you got a multi-platform project in the works in this generation, you are making it for the PlayStation 2 as the lead platform.
Right, because everybody had a PlayStation 2 at this time.
Except me.
It's like, the only exceptions were, you were on the GameCube for some weird reason, or you were being paid by Nintendo, Capcom, or you were looking to exploit the power of the Xbox.
Which not a whole lot of devs did until late in the Xbox's life cycle.
But they were there.
Yeah,
and like there. If you were using the power of the Xbox, you actually really couldn't bring that to the PlayStation 2. The power differential is actually that big. A good example there is the original Splinter Cell. Like the Splinter Cell on the Xbox and the PlayStation 2 are actually two different games. But anyway, so Spider-Man for the PlayStation 2 is okay. Like, I remember playing it in the year of 2002. I didn't buy it, but I certainly rented it. And for a movie licensed game, it's good, which is already hitting under par for a movie licensed title. It's not spectacular, if you will. Really, that award goes to Spider-Man 2. That's considered to be the MVP of, not just this era, but of like Spider-Man games in general until the Insomniac era. Like, even today, Spider-Man 2 is still highly regarded. Probably the most highly regarded Spider-Man 2 Spider-Man title, once again, outside of the Insomniac games. And the reason for that is a bizarre attention to detail. So, we were talking about this in the writer's room on Sunday. But the thing about Spider-Man 2 that makes it so special is it's a Spider-Man game that actually started to give a shit about the webbing. And I don't mean just having the webbing there. That's pretty part and parcel of Spider-Man games in this era, in general. Like, swinging around a Spider-Man is something you can do. In Spider-Man 2, you actually have to think about it. It's not just an automatic thing that you're doing no matter where you are.
The easiest way to implement this Spider-Man swinging in a video game is just say, it's basically flying, except for we occasionally throw up vertical line graphics.
Sometimes not even that. Like, I'm thinking, Activision's The Amazing Spider-Man game really sticks out as one with the magic webbing. Like, you're just over fucking Central Park and just skyline, and you're webbing. You're just fucking webbing in the sky. That's what I'm talking about. Spider-Man 2, you actually have to web towards buildings. and it's not an automatic function either. Like you actually have to, use a trigger to web from building to building to building. It's a very different experience than any other Spider-Man game. Until once again, I keep coming back to the Insomniac games because, really that is the next time we see, the and actually, the developers not necessarily give a shit about Spider-Man, but they're afforded the time and the leeway to give a shit. Because after Spider-Man 2, we get the video game interpretation of Spider-Man 3, which is not good.
To put it lightly.
Now once again the qualities
and neither was the game.
Once again the quality spectrum is on a sliding scale. Because
I'm joking about the quality of the movie Spider-Man 3. I assume we're talking about the Raimi ones.
Yes. I'm like, no one really likes Spider-Man 3, the movie or the game. I'm like, but there's and this kind of establishes the pecking order.
I've heard a strong argument that there's a good movie in there. The problem is that it has like 2 other half movies grafted onto it.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the game.
Yeah.
Anyway, like, the pecking order becomes Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, the Wii, the PlayStation 2, PSP, DS, and Game Boy Advance. If the Game Boy Advance is still having a pulse by then. Like, I'm trying to remember when they stopped putting out Game Boy Advance Spider-Man games.
I think this is one of those ones that it was started but was ultimately canned because they kind of just stopped dealing with GBA stuff.
Could be. But on the upside of this era, because because the Spider-Man movie franchise ran into troubles, let's say, and Activision had was demanding its yearly Spider-Man game. The Spider-Man games were able to break from being mere licensed games and being more of their own thing. Like, this technically started in the PlayStation 2 era with the Ultimate Spider-Man game, which is not based off of any movie. It's based off of the Ultimate Spider-Man comic that was going on at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And unequivocally, the most important game that came out of this period is Web of Shadows. Like, Web of Shadows is the multiverse one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, Web of Shadows served as the kind of the launching pad. No, it was Web of Shadows or was it Shattered Dimensions? No, it's Shattered Dimensions. Sorry.
Web of Shadows might have been the one where they introduced Madam Web, but
yeah, like I said, admittedly, this time period does blur a bit for me because once again, they were just pumping out Spider-Man games year after year after year.
Mm-hmm.
Because the dev cycle was short enough. Don't get mistaken. If it was fast enough, they'd still probably be trying to do it.
It wasn't just that it was short enough. It was they had multiple developers working on Spider-Man games.
Yeah.
This was the period where and Activision really pioneered this kind of development style in the 360 days. having a yearly franchise, at least at the beginning of the like 2006 to 2010, you could just have a team, one developer mostly. This isn't getting into like contractors and outsourcers and that whole field. Like Call of Duty. Call of Duty was handled by Infinity Ward, and then it was handed off to Infinity Ward Treyarch, and just grew and grew from there. Spider-Man also got that treatment. It was Beanox, Treyarch, and Shaba Games that would be doing a Spider-Man game in a given year. Like, anyway, Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions is the most important one of these because this was the springboard for Spider-Verse.
The idea that there are multiple universes, each of which has one or more of their own spider enhanced heroes.
Right. And also establishing like a distinct universe, like Ultimate Spider-Man, 2099 Spider-Man, Spider-Man Noir, The Amazing Spider-Man, and and on it has gone.
Let Spider Girl have a universe, goddammit.
Spider Girl has plenty of universes.
I know.
Spider Woman, like the Across the Spider-Verse Gwen Stacy Spider Woman is called Spider Woman, as opposed to other incarnations of that Gwen Stacy Spider Woman who is called Ghost Spider. I am not making any of this up, by the way.
Yeah, we need one of those conspiracy theory boards for this shit.
It's not gotten better.
What I want to know is, when are we going to get a story about Spider-Man?
No. Please, God, no.
You're not joking, by the way.
No, I'm not. For those unaware at home, Spider-Man is a colony of radioactive spiders that bit and absorbed the memories of Peter Parker, and now take on a humanoid form, wearing all of them inside a costume, and swing around New York and fight crime as Spider-Man.
Oh, God, that hurts. That hurts my soul. I want off this plane of reality, please.
This topic was worth it just for that.
You planned this, didn't you?
I did not. This is where we arrive.
You're like, content.
No, amusement.
Valid.
Anyway, the point I'm trying to get across here is Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions inspired the comic book called Spider-Verse. And that comic book storyline inspired the Spider-Verse movies that we're getting now. And just, this. I'm not sure how much of it's an inspiration on the live-action Spider-Man movies that are going on, but Spider-Man Far From Home, or whatever the third MCU Spider-Man is, also had multiverse shit in it.
Because of course.
Look, the multiverse storylines are hot right now, whether we like them or not. Look, I just finished Loki season 2. Anyway, but it's not the only Spider-Man game that came out. Got Spider-Man Edge of Time, Spider-Man Battle for New York, and we also do have Spider-Man adjacent things coming out, but they're not Spider-Man games. Like, yes, Spider-Man is in the Ultimate Marvel Ultimate Alliance games, but they're not Spider-Man games. Those are Marvel games. On the other hand, Spider-Man and X-Men in Arcade Revenge is a Spider-Man game, since he gets top billing, even though he is sharing a screen with Spider-Man. And also, for some reason, they used Arcade as the villain there. It always weirded me because it's like, who the fuck is Arcane? It's a rather obscure Marvel villain. Let's leave it at that. Anyway, the Activision Spider-Man legacy ends at the Amazing Spider-Man games. It ends about the same time as Amazing Spider-Man 2 did, basically. Because they were coming in at diminishing returns, which is not a surprise because the Amazing Spider-Man and especially the Amazing Spider-Man 2, they are very much in the mold of licensed games. Not necessarily bad. At least the first one wasn't. Although the Amazing Spider-Man games are kind of weird because they're sequels to the Amazing Spider-Man game. They're not like the reinterpretive retellings of the movies like the Raimi trilogy were. And it gets even weirder because the Amazing Spider-Man 1 is not connected to the Amazing Spider-Man 2, the game. That is because they made some storyline choices in
that were not compatible with what the movie makers ended up deciding.
Exactly. A good example of this is the introduction of Black Cat. Technically speaking, she was introduced in the Amazing Spider-Man 1, the video game, but has a much different origin than her actual origin in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's one of those Star Wars canonicity deals. It's like if the movies or the television show says something that contradicts something in like the books, or is something else that's much more ephemeral. Well, tough shit. It doesn't count in the book or whatever, or the video game or what have you. Anyway, so that gets us to basically the present day with the Insomniac Spider-Man games, which have revitalized Spider-Man as a video game property. Also, how do I put this? Like, I want to say also, what if Spider-Man Arkham Asylum? But the Spider-Man games were under Activision were trending that way anyway. Mm-hmm. Like Arkham Asylum just had a profound effect on single player combat. I think the thing that Insomniac really did was flesh out to make it less Arkham Asylum-y, if you will. There's much more spider moves. I mean, you did see some of that in the Activision ones, but you got more of that in Insomniac's Spider-Man games. Also, we got the not necessarily multiverse bleed through, but this is also the Insomniac Spider-Man games is the first time Milo Morales is playable as Spider-Man. Granted, he has to wait until the standalone spinoff to really spread his wings. Mm-hmm. But still. And you know, in terms of sales, well, these games have done really well. Like, it just came out today that Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation 5 is the fourth best-selling game of the year. Like, with 1 week's worth of data.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a non-zero chance that this game ends up the best-selling title of the year, because I don't know if you've noticed, but Sony's been pushing Spider-Man 2 really fucking hard.
Yeah. Like, I'm more than likely going to get it when I get my PS5 because I have no interest in Call of Duty.
Right, and I know that Sony is pushing the Spider-Man 2 PlayStation 5 bundle hard for the holiday season. But, if this game is able to topple, like, Tears of the Kingdom, or, distressingly, the number one best-selling game of the year so far, I'm not discounting Call of Duty, but we could also be in a situation where it's an off year.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that the Game Awards, for what they're worth, which is what's written on them, make some good decisions this year, because there were definitely some very good games and also some definitely very not good games released this year.
I mean, their Game of the Year choices were pretty predictable, but I'd say solid. I know some people were complaining that Starfield wasn't on the list, but I'm like,
having
look,
played
the choice,
Starfield, it's not that good.
it's from all that I've been hearing about Starfield, it's another Bethesda RPG, warts and all, but in space.
If we ever get a chance to review Starfield, I'd go into my gripes more with it, but
I mean, I can put it on the list somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I'd also need to get more into it because I don't even think I've finished the second mission thing yet because I just been meandering.
Yeah.
Clearly, the best solution is to just play a game for 10 minutes and then review it.
Well, we try not to be.
I know, I'm kidding.
Unless the game is very simple. Like, believe me, we have played games that only about 10 minutes were needed to understand it and loathe it.
Yep.
Anyway, so we are running short on time, so I think we'll wrap up this conversation here, and we will have a new topic next week. Anyway, so coming up on the week ahead, we do have a new episode of MSP happening in about 15 minutes. Technically it's more 45 minutes, but for our purposes it starts at 11.
It's officially 15 minutes, but Mac is traditionally half an hour late at least.
And then
it's not so much he's late.
45 minutes.
Yeah, it's more he wants to get to know the guest in various ways. Anyway, so coming up on Friday, November 17th, we plan to have Claudio of Kibe Software House. They haven't actually responded to my reminder email yet, so this is a bit in peril.
If we don't go live on Friday morning, then you'll know why.
Yeah, indeed. And if you enjoyed tonight's show, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, all that business. Anyway, and so coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews of Ebenezer and the Invisible World, Starwolf, Seeker of the Secret Space, Frog Detective, The Entire Mystery, and Clone Drone in the Danger Zone. So look for all that. And until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.